Ever wondered how Java programs make decisions and control the flow of execution? Well, it all comes down to Java control statements. The beating heart of any Java program, Java control statements manage the flow of execution, determining the sequence in which the lines of code are executed. Think of them as traffic lights, guiding the flow of traffic in a bustling city. There are three types of control statements. First, we have decision-making statements like if-then else, and switch. These help our program make choices based on certain conditions. Next, we have looping statements like for, while, and do while, which allow us to repeat certain actions. Finally, we have branching statements such as break, continue, and return. These guide our program when it reaches a fork in the road, deciding which path to take. Now that we've set the stage, let's dive deeper into each type of control statements. We start with decision-making statements. These are the road forks of our Java journey. Imagine your program as a vehicle driving along a route. At certain points, it encounters a fork in the road and must decide which path to take. That's where decision-making statements come into play. They allow your program to choose a direction based on certain conditions. Let's start with the simplest one, the if-then statement. It's like a simple fork in the road. If a particular condition is true, then your program takes a specific action. For example, if the fuel in your vehicle is low, then you would stop at a gas station. In Java, it might look something like this. If fuel is less than 10, then stop for gas. Moving on, we have the if-then-else statement. It's a bit more complex, like a fork with 3 branches. Your program checks a condition, and if that condition is true, it takes one action. If it's false, it takes a different action. For instance, if there's traffic on the road, then you take a detour, else you continue on the same route. This provides your program with an alternative path to follow when the initial condition is not met. Lastly, we have the switch statement, a multi-way decision that offers numerous paths based on the value of an expression. Think of it as a complex intersection with multiple exits. For instance, based on the traffic light color, you decide what action to take. If it's green, you go. If it's yellow, you slow down. If it's red, you stop. The switch statement efficiently handles this kind of scenario in Java by allowing you to define different cases for different possible values. These decision-making statements are the steering wheel of your Java programs, guiding them through the intricate maze of code. They ensure that your program responds appropriately to different situations, making it dynamic and responsive. With these decision-making tools, your Java programs can take the right path at any crossroad. Moving on to looping statements, the roundabouts of our program's journey. Let's begin with the for loop, a classic in the world of programming. This 3-part control structure consists of an initialization, a condition, and an iteration statement. It's like a well-planned road trip. You start at a certain point, continue the journey as long as you meet your travel conditions, and with each loop, you move a step closer to your destination. For example, if you want to print all numbers from 1 to 10, a for loop is your best bet. Next up is the while loop, a bit similar to the for loop but with more flexibility. It's like an open-ended road trip. You start the journey, and as long as your travel conditions are met, you keep going. The difference is, you don't necessarily know how many steps you'll take. For instance, if you're reading inputs until a user decides to quit, a while loop will serve you well. Lastly, we have the do while loop, the adventurous one. This loop will execute the block of code at least once before checking the condition. It's like going on an impromptu road trip. You hit the road, and only then decide whether or not you want to continue the journey. If you're in a situation where you want to process user input at least once, the do while loop is your companion. Each of these loops has its strengths and use cases, and understanding when to use which loop is a key step in mastering Java. Whether it's a well-structured for loop, a flexible while loop, or an adventurous do while loop, each one is a powerful tool in your Java toolkit. So when you're faced with a task that needs repetition, don't be daunted. Instead, remember these looping statements. It's like having a compass in the vast world of coding. With them, you can navigate through tasks efficiently, making your code cleaner and your life easier. With looping statements, you can make your Java programs repeat actions as needed, saving you time and lines of code. Next up are branching statements, the escape routes in our Java journey. These are the unsung heroes of Java, working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep your program flowing smoothly. Let's start with the break statement. Imagine you're on a road trip, and you've set your GPS to avoid all toll roads. In the world of Java, this is your break statement. It allows you to exit a loop, even if the loop's condition would normally keep it running. It's like saying, "Hey, I've reached my destination, no need to keep driving." Next is the continue statement. Picture you're reading a book, and you decide to skip a few pages that don't interest you. That's exactly what the continue statement does. It skips the rest of the current loop iteration and jumps straight to the next one. It's a way of saying, "This part isn't relevant, let's move on." Finally, we have the return statement. It's like the director of a movie yelling "cut" and ending the scene. The return statement ends the execution of a method and optionally returns a value to the caller. It's a way of saying, "I'm done here, let's go back to where we started." Now, you might be wondering how these are used in real-life programming. Let's say you have a loop that's searching through an array for a specific value. Once the value is found, you can use a break statement to exit the loop because there's no need to keep searching. Or suppose you're iterating through a list and you want to skip any null values. Here, a continue statement would come in handy. And when you're writing a method that calculates the area of a square, a return statement can be used to send the result back to the caller. Branching statements give you the power to control the flow of your program beyond simple loops and decisions. They put you in the driver's seat, allowing you to navigate your code with precision and finesse. Now that we've covered the basics, let's talk about some best practices and common mistakes with Java control statements. Starting with the common pitfalls, a frequent mistake is the misuse of the equal sign operator in if-then-else statements. Remember, the equal sign operator checks for reference equality, not the actual content. So when you're comparing objects like strings, it's better to use the equals method. It's like confusing twins based on their appearance. They may look identical, but they have different thoughts and feelings. Next up is the infamous infinite loop. It's like getting stuck in a revolving door with no exit in sight. This usually happens when we forget to increment the counter in a for loop or when the loop's condition always evaluates to true. So always ensure your loops have a valid exit condition. Another common mistake is having unreachable code. This occurs when you write code after a return statement or after calling system exit. This code will never be executed, and it's like shouting into a void. Now, let's shift gears to some best practices. Firstly, always initialize your variables. Uninitialized variables can lead to unexpected behavior. It's like going to a party and forgetting your name tag, confusing for everyone involved. Secondly, use braces, even for single statement control structures. This increases readability and reduces the risk of logic errors. It's like using punctuation in a sentence. Without it, things can get confusing real fast. Thirdly, keep your methods small and focused. A method should do one thing and do it well. When a method gets too long, it becomes harder to understand and debug. It's like trying to read a novel in one sitting, overwhelming and likely to end in confusion. Lastly, keep your code dry, which stands for don't repeat yourself. If you find yourself writing the same code multiple times, consider creating a method. It's like having a tool for every job, rather than using a hammer for everything. With these tips in mind, you can write efficient and error-free Java code with control statements. So, there we have it, a deep dive into Java control statements. We've journeyed through the landscape of decision-making statements, exploring the significance of if, else if, and switch in determining the direction of a program. From there, we ventured into the realm of looping statements, where while, do while, and for loops continuously execute code based on specific conditions. Then we navigated the branching statements, unearthing the power of break, continue, and return in controlling the flow of execution within loops and methods. And finally, we looked at the best practices and common mistakes to avoid when using these control statements, highlighting the importance of proper indentation, using braces even for single statement blocks, and avoiding infinite loops. Remember, these control statements are your tools for crafting logical, efficient, and effective Java programs. Understanding and mastering Java control statements is a crucial step in becoming a proficient Java programmer. So keep practicing and happy coding.